Good morning, Coldwell Banker, George Realty on this beautiful Friday where we can see the snow-capped mountains through the windows here. It's a very nice day today. So today we're going to be going over the property type addenda that will allow you to use the RPA contract, and when you use this addendum, it then becomes a probate, manufactured home, tenancy in common, stock cooperative, mixed use purchase addendum. So we're going to go over those addendums briefly. And then if you have any questions, let me know. The only one that I haven't had experience with, so I'll do my best on it, is a TIC, the TIC, tenancy in common purchase addendum. The rest I've had some experience. So let's get started. So how you make the RPA, add these addendas is on 4A, which is page 4 of 17 on your RPA. So we're going to get started with the probate agreement purchase addendum. You attach this if it's a probate copy. So you're going to fill out all of the top. You'll probably need help from, if you're making an offer from the listing agent, you will need help. Maybe they've drafted a probate purchase addendum so that you know what's going on with the property. So court confirmation, check below. So the seller should deliver to the buyer a written notice at time of acceptance or within the time for seller delivery of documents, if court confirmation is required or it's not. So on these, you're going to really be playing closely, talking to the listing agent, because you will not know if court confirmation is required or not. Some require it, some don't, okay? So if court confirmation is not initially required on these agreements, the notice of the terms of the sale to beneficiaries and heirs is still necessary. So if any of the beneficiary or heirs object, then court confirmation is required, okay? So maybe the listing agent knows up top and they will tell you, yes, it's required. So in that case, you'd be checking 3B, okay? So there's a lot of ins and outs of this. When a buyer bids on a property and court confirmation is required, the listing agent may accept that agreement, but it's also subject to the probate court. So everybody shows up in court and they bid on it. If they're overbid and they don't want to keep bidding, then they can drop out into about 3 of these cells, and then the highest bidder takes the property, okay? So if you are in a probate agreement, you can come see me. I will go through all of this with you, and we will add this to your RPA. It doesn't hurt to bid on these, because sometimes, you know, you won't have a lot of bidders at court, and sometimes there'll be a lot. It just really depends on the property. So if you look here, I just want to point out a couple of things. So the seller can remove this property from the court calendar if the buyer has not removed all of the contingencies. Okay, so, or only these contingencies checked below 10 days prior to the court confirmation hearing date. So some local probate court rules may require that all contingencies be removed before a petition can be filed. I think the one I worked, it was that way. All contingencies had to be removed. So there's a little bit more intricacies that we may not be aware of. If you're working a probate offer, you know, come see me, come see Doug, come see Peter Cam, okay? So we'll move on to here. Oh, and also the court can determine the commission amount right here. So be aware of that. And there is a probate advisory that will attach to that probate addendum. So there are still requirements for disclosures. On a probate, seller is exempt from providing the buyer with the TDS, natural hazard disclosure, Melrose lien. So read these exemptions, but there's still requirements. They're not exempt from common law and statutory duties. So seller is not exempt from applicable statutory obligations to disclose earthquake fault line, etc. So for me, I would probably still want the NHD report, because I would want to have something telling me a third party about those hazard lines and zones. There's also in the NHD, there's other information about property taxes and stuff like that. So I think it's a good report to have. Even if the seller is exempt, you may want to consider getting that for your buyer, okay? So that is what will attach to the probate addendum. So coming down, manufactured or mobile home purchase addendum. I have sold a couple of them. I haven't done a lot, but you get with a good escrow company that does do mobile home or manufactured home sales, and it makes the deal a lot easier. When you are going through these, make sure that you are using a escrow officer that does specialize. Marie from Contempo Escrow comes to all our meetings. Yeah, she specializes. So if you're going to do a mobile home, use a company that specializes. Now, you may not have a choice if you're the buyer's agent, but I'm sure they'll pick a good escrow officer that specializes. So a mobile home, it's a personal property manufactured home. Here you check this box, a mobile home on leased or rented land, if that is the case, or that it's going to be sold with real property. Additional descriptions, you will need the manufacturer's name, model, date of manufacture, date of first sale. Now you can get that information later from the listing agent, and there should be a decal on that mobile home that they can give you the decal stickers. A little bit about mobile home selling. Sometimes they can be very hard to finance, so make sure you understand that. Secondly, if it's on leased land, you cannot just assume that you're going to get it. The first step will always be to apply to the park. The park has its own rules, so you need to go through the application process. This agreement, you make it subject to that, okay? So let me come down here. Right here on 8, residency application and park rules located on lease or rented land. Buyer shall, within 5 days after acceptance, submit a completed residency application. Buyer obtaining a resident approval to be living in that park is a contingency. Such approval shall be obtained 5 days prior to close of escrow. If the approval is not obtained prior to this time, the buyer has the right to cancel the agreement. So because you're working so hard, I would really recommend that you go at the front end and get the application. You'll get an answer fairly quick. I did one, it did take about 7 to 8 business days, but we were at the front end of escrow. So that's what I recommend that you do. Now, also, like I said, you're going to want to use a good escrow officer that can direct you. They will help you with a lot of things because there's paperwork that needs to be filed with HUD and those kind of things. Okay, so we're going to move on. So I have never worked a tenant in common interest sale. So I wanted to put what it is up front because sometimes to me, I'm like, what is that? So the key points about tenancy in common is it can be an unequal ownership. Okay, it can be individual rights. Each owner has the right to sell, transfer, or mortgage their individual sale of the property. They're fractional, what they owe fractionally. If one owner dies, their share of the property passes on to their heirs, not to other tenants in common. Okay, so what might be used? I think in San Francisco, I was reading that they've done some conversions into condos on some large buildings, and those are all held in tenants in common. So if you haven't done this, come to Peter or I or Doug, and we will help you. And because I've never even been involved in a tenant in common sale, but anyway, nevertheless, tenancy in common purchase addendum. So the buyer's occupancy rights are here, and it's going to identify what they have that they can use. Do they have parking spaces, storage space, decks, etc.? Tenancy in common agreement. Buyer is cautioned not to proceed without a TIC agreement in place. Buyer shall sign the TIC agreement and any amendments to it prior to close of escrow. So make sure that all of the agreements are in. Seller has 7 days to deliver that agreement so the buyer can review it. Let me go over some financing. Check all that apply. If it's a fractional TIC loan, buyer will obtain individual financing using a fractional TIC loan. Again, I don't know any lenders that do that. If we are going to have some sales like this, I will certainly find some. So here's all the financing that you can check for the TIC. Okay, here's what I'm talking about in San Francisco, condominium conversion. So if the property is purchased with the intent, maybe they're in on the bottom end where it's going to be converted, you check this. Financial and operational disclosures, the seller needs to deliver to the buyer within 7 days after acceptance of a completed TIC financial disclosure statement. So there is a CAR form that the seller will need to fill out on the TIC. And if checked, you can use on number 6, simultaneous sale of other TIC interests. If that's the case, check the box. Are they selling? Are they buying more than one? Selling more than one? Check the box. Closing requirements. So if buyer is purchasing in an existing interest, an interest in an existing TIC, the buyer, these are things you need to watch for on this. The buyer needs to reimburse the seller at close of escrow for any funds that the seller has remaining in the TIC group's reserve account. So that's going to add to the closing costs or operating amount account. So just be clued in on this closing requirement because it does have money in there. I would get a closing statement early so that your buyer has time to make sure they have the applicable funds. Hopefully the listing agent gave it to you early so that you know how much the buyer's going to need to reimburse. Okay. So there's one other thing I want to point out on 11, just so that we know the law. Sale of 5 or more units. A public report is required from the subdivision offices of the California Department of Real Estate prior to the sale of TIC interest by a seller who owns 5 or more TIC interests in the property. Okay, so just be aware of that law. And stock cooperative purchase agreement. I have had experience in this. If you go to any of the leisure worlds, those are stock cooperative. So you are literally selling a stock cooperative and they give them a certificate which gives them the right to live in that condo or that unit as it is. Okay, so the property being purchased, you're going to put the share stock in the California. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me get my mind back. You need to have the corporate name who holds it. So when you're first selling a stock cooperative, you call that office and ask, or you get it from the listing agent. You need to know what parking spaces. In the one that I sold, the parking spaces were already identified for that unit and there was a little storage. So financing, part of the purchase price shall be financed by buyer's assumption of seller's obligation to pay. So be careful on this one because years ago, Leisure World would not allow financing. These are cash only transactions. You had to come in with all cash. So you want to make sure that you understand, is that particular park going to allow financing or do you need all cash? They're still going to go through inspections on the unit to see what the condition of it is. If there was a death on the property, make sure you don't forget to disclose that. This is normal disclosure stuff. Even though it's a stock cooperative, you do need to disclose and do all of your disclosures. Board approval. The seller needs to obtain approval of this sale from the corporation's board of directors. Buyer shall cooperate by providing the board within 10 days after acceptance the financial documents that they're going to require to check the buyer out. So once you're in those types of property, I know because my aunt lived there for many, many years, it's just like you're in a condo, but there are requirements because I'm the one that sold hers after her death. So you just need to be on top of it. You need to be applying early to the board and get your person, qualified. Okay, so make sure that if you get involved in a stock cooperative, read this disclosure a few times. If you have any questions, I have a little experience with this. I'll be happy to help any of you with it. So mixed use purchase addendum. So if you're purchasing in a mixed use, so you'll see some of them that have commercial on the bottom, right? It's pretty standard around here, condos on top. So if that's the case, you're going to use the mixed use. You're going to outline how many residential, things like that. Up here, description of the mixed use property and currently occupied commercial units. Additional financing shall be assumed subject to or other items included. It's the same thing here. Are there items included or excluded? Additional allocation of costs. The buyer or seller shall pay for a phase 1 environmental survey. Probably because it's a mixed use building, they've added that in. We always recommend that you do consider having a phase 1 report because it's all connected. A lot of these mixed use buildings, you drive up Valley, you drive anywhere around here, they are connected.
Is this if you're buying the entire project or is it just like a condo that's in the mixed use development?
It's this one is if it's in a condo in. So if I'm buying mixed use, it's an actual disclosure that will tell the people like, hey, you're buying and there's 10 commercials on the bottom and there's 270 units on top.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that you're buying it, it affects you. It
Yeah.
affects your ownership.
Wait, yeah. So you're going to stipulate on the offer which unit you're buying, but if you are buying in a mixed use, please do provide this disclosure to them because you want to outline how many units are commercial and how many are residential. And the reason why is there's some people, like I've seen it on Main Street, the level that was 2 above restaurants, they didn't like that, or maybe they want to go higher. So you want to make sure that they understand. Now, yes, this can be used to purchase the whole thing, but if I'm selling them in a mixed use complex, I'm still going to attach it so that they understand, okay? And you're going to make sure that Americans with Disability Acts, they have a paragraph on that. So mixed use is a little bit tricky. If you're buying from a developer, they will have their own contract, okay? So a lot of times if you're buying from a developer, you're not even going to be on a car. If it's a new mixed use project, they will have their own. They will have disclosures outlining what this does, how many commercial, how many units, okay? But if you're going and buying on your own, you may want to use the addendum. I would want it, and I would only fill out the applicable spaces so that that buyer knows that you are sitting on top of 10 commercial or whatever. Just as an extra disclosure, if some of it doesn't make sense, don't worry about it.
That's if you're representing the buyer.
Yeah, yeah. But I always want, anytime I'm going to make sure they know how many commercial versus how many units, because some people won't want to be in a large community. So make sure that they understand that.
Does this also tell you where the commercial would be or anything like that?
What I would do is on the preliminary title report, there should be a layout of how the thing is structured. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. But you can also ask for a site plan and it'll have like, a simple layout of where the commercial versus residential, or if you look at Atlantic Times Square, that, in Monterey Park, there's a lot of commercial down on the bottom, and there are 60 or 70 condos above. So those are things that people would want to know. So for me, I will still fill it out, even if I'm not buying the whole thing, just because I certainly want this in there. Okay, what's going on? More disclosures is better than not enough, okay? All right. So use it for the whole or use it for one, but make sure. Now, if you don't want to use the whole addendum for one, Harrison, make sure you're disclosing the top part, of how many are in there. Because even if somebody buys in there and they want to do a phase 1, don't discourage them, let them do what they want. Sometimes though, if it's established, I can't see anybody probably on an established mixed use building, they probably buying a condo won't come in and do a phase one. Okay. But it doesn't hurt to go over this. Okay. The rental service agreements, I would want to know about that because one that I sold in, they come to and pick up the trash at your door. So those kind of things, use this just as your guide and ask about those kind of service agreements as well. But most of the time, 99% of the time, they will have their own contract on these unless it's, is it used, unless it's been sold before. Are there any questions
So
on?
as if I'm representing the buyer, I would go ahead and use our car forms,
Yes.
and then they would use their forms for.
No. So when you're buying from a developer, your car is out for, I would say 99% of the time it's going to be gone. And this is, I'm talking brand new, or when they do conversions. If any of you have seen where like we worked on Hudson on a project, that thing was not completed, right? So somebody came in and bought the building and completed all of the condos. In that case, they still had their own contract. There was no car forms involved. So Harrison, your question was really good. I would probably only use the top of this form if it's used, or been purchased before, because I want to disclose about the, and then, about the ratio, but they're going to have their own. If you're selling in a brand new, make sure you ask for that contract ahead of time. Some of them can be 66, 70 pages. So you want to get the contract ahead of time. You want to be reading it. You want to have your highlighter out. The floor agent there will be happy to sit with you and explain any of the questions. And a lot of times, like we did, they'll let you come in with your client so that the contract can be explained. Okay. Any questions from Zoom? Okay, so one other thing I want to mention, if you haven't already signed up, we have a couple of commercial classes, and CRE Win and CRE Navigate. Corporate is sponsoring them. They are free. So if you want to come and sign up for those and you're having an issue, let me know. I can sign you off of my computer if you have a problem, because I've already signed up a couple of agents that couldn't get in. So come on in and sign up for that. It's free. The one begins next week.
11th, right?
Yes, and Peter Cam has e-blasted to you about 2 or 3 times on that. Come to me if you can't get signed up and I'll sign you up. I'm going as well. I think we can always learn. And if there's no questions, I'm going to conclude the meeting.
This is
I have a question.
That's online, that class.
Yeah. Yes, Rebecca?
Okay, I did sign up with the link. Does it show that I did sign up for the commercial classes?
You should have gotten a you're signed up confirmation email.
I'm gonna look for that then.
Yeah.
Where
And
are they gonna be held at?
Zoom.
You get more
Oh, on Zoom. Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're signed up, you'll get a confirmation email back. So if you did not get it, it does not hurt you to go in and log in and do it again.
Okay.
And if anybody's having problem, go ahead and let me help you get signed up. Okay. Just call me.
Okay. That's good. Yes.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We're going to have some different trainings from different people coming up. So we'll do some pertinent information that you need, and we'll have a couple of times a month, we'll have people sitting in this spot to give some additional training, like on fire hazard, things of that nature that will pertain to our contracts. So thank you all. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Have a good weekend.
You too.